since my water is not super dirty. Let's take care of that sheep before we do any other colors. I just specifically wanted to get that fence in there before our paper got wet so our stuff would not tear. Same technique with the sheep. Drag and pull. Damp brush, lots of paint, little water for your outline. This will help you control your black. It will also give you the ability to kind of create soft and subtle gray shadows on your sheep's body. So see, I'm dragging it with a damp clean brush and I'm pulling it in, pulling that diluted black into the body. And because it's diluted, meaning it's less intense, there's more water than paint in this current situation here, because my brush is clean and I have more water on it than I do paint. You're going to lighten that black and it's going to turn into a soft, gentle gray. This is perfect for shading things, adding, subtle shapes to your sheep's body, shapes of shadow. And you can leave some of the white of that paper peeking through too, as a way to keep your sheep's wool nice and white. If we would have done the wash for the sky and the grass and then did this, then you would kind of have like a greenish bluish sheep. And nobody wants that, right? No. You would have an alien sheep from Mars. Nobody wants an alien sheep from Mars. Now for the face, you can decide if you want it tan or whatever you decide. If you want it tan, I would lighten up your cheek line just a tiny bit if you want it tan, okay? Because if you don't lighten up that cheek line in your pencil, you're going to actually muddy up your watercolor with your pencil graphite line, and you don't want to do that. I think I showed that last time. It literally turns your tan color kind of like a grayish brown. It's very sad. See how I did that? Drag, 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 drag. And a dot of brown. Just a dot. I don't have a tan color. I'm making one. See how I'm just using very minuscule, tiny amounts of dots of color? I'm cleaning my brush out and I'm going to mix them using my new clean damp brush. I would hold on the details in your face until your sheep is entirely dry, because you don't want to muddy up or have like a spider web effect of paint. If you put wet paint on wet paper, it's going to spider web out like wet ink on, let's say you get your homework wet or it rains and your words or your typed words on your printer paper start leaking everywhere. All right, repeat that process with the tree. You're going to do a wash on the tree. It's going to be fabulous, you guys. Beautific. But I would even switch to a bigger brush. After you do your outline for your tree, I would switch to a bigger brush because your shape is so big. It's just going to make it easier for you to fill in this shape. Just be careful around your tree trunk. Now, the rest is super, super simple, right? Here, let me add some shadow by dabbing in some color here. I'm going to dab in some darkness for for my tree shadow. Okay, so the rest is going to be super simple. It's literally a wash, and then you pick up some of that wash using a cotton ball or some. So for a wash, you're actually going to have more water and less paint. So my brush is pretty damp here, and I picked up maybe a few swoops of blue. And I'm gonna take my, well, I don't know where my cotton ball went. So I'm gonna take my rag and I'm just gonna pick up some of this to kind of create those flowy kind of and you can add little strokes of color to darken up the area around your cloud. But see, look. That's lifted. Let me show you again. Got wet dots of paint, and clouds. Boop boop boo doo 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 boop boo doo. So you got to be the judge of this on how wet you want your brush. A wetter brush with dots of paint is going to give you an easier cloud shape to make, but you're going to have less control over your paint because there's so much more water. So just keep that in mind. If you have a huge space to work with, like right here, I don't really have tiny space here. It's really big, so I can kind of let that paint kind of spread out or spider web out, because that's what happens when your surface is super wet. See, I'm going to make my surface wet. Your paint spider webs. It stretches out like that. So that's why it's so important to be very conscientious or think about how much water you're using. But since I'm not really near too close to my tree, I can risk that spider web happening, and then I can use my dab effect. But if you get closer to here, I would just be super careful with the amount of water. Like, use less water over here, all right? Because I'd be so sad to see all of that beautiful work you put in only to have blue spiderweb itself across your tree trunk or your fencing. You might have to switch to a tinier brush here, but literally the grass and the sky are all just a wash. And since I showed you how to do the wash before signing off today, you guys shouldn't have a problem finishing this in class, outside of class. Yep, be very careful around this area, friends. See, it's already starting to kind of feather out. So just be careful. A corner of your brush to kind of chisel your way in between your branches. Let's bring this up here. You can bring your brush all the way to the edge of your tree. In the meantime, I'm letting my lamb leg here dry because some of my stuff was a little too wet. And since our tree is in front of our sky, we are going to hop. We're going to end at this side of the tree trunk and then hop over to the other side. Be super careful about these tiny little spots here. Oh, I I pulled some of that in there. So here, let me fix it. I'm going to erase some of it. Okay, I'm going to wait for that to dry and then I'll put some paint over it. Maybe a darker blue or something. Alright, so I'm going to work over here since my legs are still drying. But I'm literally creating, I'm literally creating a hill using a green wash. Now if I want, I could vary the color of the hill. Like do a lighter wash down here on the bottom and a darker wash on top. But for simplicity's sake, I'm going to see what it looks like before doing that. And if I like it, then great. If I don't, I can always adjust. Now, my flowers are actually going to peep through. Specifically because they're made out of wax crayon. Wax and oil do not mix very well with water. Same rule applies over here. Be super careful with your fluff. You don't want to turn your sheep into a green blob. Be very interesting, but I highly don't recommend it. So chisel your way through here. You got to pick up paint and move it to other areas, then do so. You want to be super, super careful in this area. I'm literally just using my bristles to go in and out of these legs. And I'm going to create a little bit of a shadow here. Kind of help some of this pop out. Alright, so I'm going to let this dry before I even consider adding details to the face. Don't want to risk spreading paint everywhere. So I'm going to pause here for a minute. Okay, so I got super stoked about finishing this painting and then totally forgot to record it because I'm a numbskull. Alright, so you remember that shading I put in with that dry brush? Well, now that it's dried out, it's a lot lighter than what it appeared in the video. And since the sheep or the lamb is closer up to the viewer, I made sure that the shadow was a lot crisper and a lot darker in value than the tree or the hill. And I didn't like how my crayon kind of faded out when I applied that green wash. So I went over it again with oil pastel because I'm in love with oil pastel. I did the same with the cheeks, and I also used a thin fine point Sharpie for the face because I do not trust the steadiness of my hand when it comes to doing fine details like that, nor do I have the correct brush to do these types of details. With that being said, you can use mixed media to add finer details to your piece. Artists do it all the time.